So this is the most basic kit. You get these from eBay, you get them in all different versions. These just happen to be the V4s. Now that's indicated by the V4 right here. You can buy them in a V6 or a V4. No, that does not have to do with the engine, but it has to do with the amount of riders. Now I have bought both sets, both V4s and V6s, which is supposed to be able to do 6 people at one time. So you would end up with multiples of them. Now granted, I've only got so many with me, but with the V4s, you can get all 4 people in a full duplex, as they call it, or an open communication. That means anybody can talk to anybody at the same time. Now, you would think by going to the V6 that you would be able to just have the exact same, only 6 people. The problem is what they end up doing is they take and they make one person, or A, the primary, and then it becomes 1 in the middle, more or less, and 5 on the outside. So it can go A to B, or A to C, A to D, and so on, but it's not a full duplex system. So I don't really like those as much unless you prefer to just be power hungry and say, okay, I'm gonna talk with one person at a time. Now, to get down to basics, when I first started these, I ordered 2 of them in a V4. They will come different versions, with some that have the headsets that go in the helmets, or some of them that will come with a simple over-the-ear piece. Now we've run these in a pinch. It's not that great. You can still hear one another. It just simply goes over the ear, has a mic. It can be reversed for either side, whichever one you want to wear it on. And then you just simply plug it into the bottom. Now I'm not going to go through the whole pairing video. There is a way to do it. You turn them on, you get both of them to pair. The light will blink to let you know they're paired. Simple off button. This will be the cheapest route and still be able to get you between 2 buggies, or 2 people, rider and driver, or car 1 and car 2.
Doing a little fishing in the Razor. Crikey, she's a big one.
These kits do come in a cute little box. You can order them up. I mean, obviously this one's a couple years old, so they usually come with a mounting bracket on the back side of it. So what typically happens is you take this and slide this up inside of the helmet, and you tighten down the 2 screws that are on here, and then you can actually attach the unit by sliding it together on the outside of a helmet. It latches in. These are the ones that I do prefer. We will be using these. Now, like I said, I tried to use an iPod on one of them and I never did use it, but there is the other set that I mentioned, the V6s, and that's what came with another port right here that was an auxiliary, and they came with a 3.5 millimeter to a 2.5 millimeter for an auxiliary cable. Now this is a hard one. The other ones, they came with one that's a little more springy, which is not too bad if you have, say, a chest pocket on your harness or whatever. Then you can actually plug this into the bottom of the headset, plug this into the iPod, tuck it into your chest pocket, and then you're good to go. Now for the great part, you can go down to Walmart and just get your regular set shooting muffs. Get whichever ones you prefer. These are just the El Cheapos. They're made by Champion, obviously. They're like a 25 noise reduction rating. And then there's the slimmer ones that I'm going to try and work into a build. So that way, you know, when you're leaning left or right, or you bump left or right, that the actual muffs themselves don't hit you in the shoulders. These are a little bit bulky. They're not a real big problem, but the whole point here is that you're gonna take something that has communication between one person and another. And we all know that Razors are nice and quiet. So instead of having an open earpiece that takes in a little bit of road noise, these aren't too bad, but it's not an open earpiece. You're gonna actually get some noise reduction. That'll help quiet down the razor in and of itself. I know some of the YouTube videos that I've seen as of late, I've been discussing with Crash City Side-by-Sides doing this video, and they both run a turbo, if I remember right, with no muffler. So sometimes in the videos, you know, they're communicating back and forth as to which lines to take, you know, and it becomes a little bit difficult, especially when you have a little bit of distance between you. So in this case, when you have car 1 and car 2, or your driver and your spotter, you can talk to one another instantaneously. You'll get the noise reduction out of the actual headsets. Now, if you want to go and spend some extra money and get, say, 33 rated NRR noise reduction rating, or you get some that are a little bit less, depending on how much of the machine you want to hear, or the ambient sounds. So one of the first things you want to do, obviously, you want to get your headsets out. You can go ahead and pull these apart. Have a little metal bracket on the side right here. It will pop out. It's a little bit of a challenge. Let's see if I can do it without hitting the camera. Just go ahead and pop them out of there, because you're going to work on them separately. We'll get back to this. Now the insides of them, pull this little inside out. That'll pop off. Now this is where you get your foam. It comes out, and it should have an extra little piece tucked up in here for the extra little bit of a curve. So this is the basics of it. Obviously, you want to tear down the other one. To get the actual unit itself mounted to the headset, obviously take the bracket off of it, and then you're going to want to take this piece off. These two screws are going to come out, and then this one will separate. Now this piece you won't need, so you get rid of it, and this is what you need. Notice the inserts on the back side of here, the threaded inserts. This is what's going to come in handy here in a second. So when you go to mount this, you want to take, this is, you know, where you don't have to be so accurate, but if you really want to, take your micrometer, or mic for short, and then you can find your drill bit size. Because you're going to be working in plastic, you probably want to keep it as close to the screw as possible, so that way you have as much material. So a 3.5 millimeter or 0.14 inch. So then you're going to pick a side, one side or the other, generally the left side, and you're going to want to take your bracket, put it on the side. Oops, turn that around. On this side right here. Now you'll notice there is this little bit of a reinforcement bump in here, so we take and we shave that off of there. Take this bracket for reference, since it'll sit up against there. It sits nice and flat. And this is only going to be for a template, if you can hold on to it anyway. Then you can make a mark however you want to. I just happen to have a silver Sharpie. This will give you your holes that you're going to want to drill for your mounting screws. So that way you can get your mounting tab on there. So, one 3.5 millimeter bolt or screw, one 3.5 millimeter drill bit. all the way through. Looks like they're going to be a little bit crooked. No big ordeal. Now you can take your bracket that actually goes on the back of the piece, and using their supplied screws, surprisingly, start them in through the backside. Now you can see that once you get them all the way through there, if you use an exact 3.5 on the 3.5, it's going to be a tight fit. It'll basically thread itself in there, but I like that just that way they don't want to back themselves out. And you can see that there is threads sticking out of here, which will bolt into here. So now we're going to back them out just to where they're flush with the surface, and then rethread them into the actual bracket. Nice and sturdy, albeit crooked, still on there. So test fit. Slides in. And it's in there. So now on to the actual fun part of soldering and wiring. Now I do this so that way I can stay as close as I can to the wire diameter, and that way when you go and you make a hole in the top of this, it keeps it as close to the wire diameter, and then it keeps the water and the dirt and the mud and most of that stuff out of there as much as possible. If you just were to go and, you know, take a drill bit this size and just bore a hole down through here, not only does that allow a lot more stuff in, but also it defeats the purpose of the whole noise reduction, because the more holes you put in this, the more the actual noise is going to seep through it. So in this case, we have a 3mm wire. Obtain a 3mm bit, or in this case a 3.5mm, which should be just the same size as the bolt. Now, since I've done this once or twice, I guess it would be worth noting that generally I try to pick a spot that's actually going to be in between both of these foam pieces. So that way when you go to actually layer them back in, this can be fed from the backside and up into the foam and into the speaker itself. You know, maybe 1/4 of an inch back from the actual molded line in the plastic. Comes to the final earpieces, you have two options. You can either poke a hole through this, feed the wire through the backside, and then lay your speaker directly on top of it, which then kind of tends to, depending on your ears, if you have some ears that, you know, stick out more than others. I got a little tiny one, so I don't worry about it as much. But what I sometimes do is just take the soldering iron, lay it down on the foam, and then I can literally go around it and recess. This will be nasty, it will smell. Not that you can smell it through the video, but if you do this in a house, it's probably going to stay for a little while. Just burn you a circle. And then you can take a pair of scissors, cut that out, make it a recessed hole. So that way, that'll sit down in there, and then it don't stick out. So we've already got 2 of them done. I just make my hole in the back here, just take the soldering iron and just burn me a hole straight through it. inside of there again. Speaker leads back on. You can fold that back over. Little fabric piece back on. Lay that down in there. Put your cute little foam cover. Outer earpiece. Watch these, because if you get your fingers in there, your skin in there just right, it tends to eat it. And get this pushed back into there. It should snap in both sides. Now you have one side done. This is where it gets a little bit more tricky. You usually want to mount this piece, plug this in, and then you can route this wire and make sure that you have enough so that way you don't cut it too short and you're back at square one and have to wait for another 2 weeks. Got that piece bolted. We'll get the comms slid and locked into place. Get that plugged in. First piece foam in. So you would almost want to take this as short as possible, but don't forget that these do tend to want to kind of fold up in here sometimes. They'll get turned all the way around, so it does have a little bit of extra play in here, so that way you don't end up tearing it out of there. Same as before, just gotta pin the ends of it just a little bit. Grab your other foam piece, this one's already done. Left a little bit of the sticky on there, which is good. Now these were drilled earlier from something else, so I'm gonna have to try and make some holes to see if I can get it to line up right. I'm going to put new screws in this one. Took. Non-magnetic tips. What? And that one took. So, other than this little bit of long wire, which wouldn't be too hard to remedy with, say, maybe a, I don't know, a small zip tie up in here, which I don't really like that idea. The old ones didn't have this long of a wire, but you know, at least it's in there and it's on there. And boom, is flexible. Now this one does actually come with an arrow indicating which side of the microphone goes towards your mouth. So there will be 2 of these. This one right now is currently A. B will be up next. I'm not going to do that in this video. Now, there will be another version coming out later on. I'm yet to play with it a little bit, but, you know, getting started with a YouTube channel, you don't exactly get all the funding and everything else right off the bat, so I have to save up for the next version. I will go ahead and get the B portion of this done, and then get these out of here. At worst case scenario, you'll probably be able to find it on the Razor forums, and by all means, stay on the lookout for the follow-up video, and see you on the next one.